Hello, so today we're going to talk about compatibility in astrology, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And what I think is the most accurate way to look at it, or how I personally look at it, what I look for, when comparing charts. So the first thing that I would say is one of the most important things is the ascendant-descendant axis. That is a well-known fact. The descendant is the seventh house. So it really is about your partners, it's about your relationships. So you need to look at the sign that is there, and you need to look at the planets that are there as well. So you will see that you will, more often than not, the primary factor for you to be attracted to someone, I would say even like the must have would be the energy of your seventh house and the planets in it, if there are planets in it. So for example, you are an Aries ascendant, you have a Libra descendant, so you're going to be attracted to Libra people, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they need to have planets in Libra, although if they do, it's going to fit, obviously. But they need to have this energy that is similar to Libra people, so people who are very graceful, sociable, people who are more moderate, diplomatic, that kind of things. Maybe there's going to be an importance on partnerships and even like having harmony in a relationship. So that's just an example. But if you have, let's say you have Saturn in Libra, or you have Mercury as well there, then you're going to be attracted possibly to Capricorn people because of Saturn, right? Saturn rules Capricorn, or people with a strong Saturn energy, people who are more serious, people who are very disciplined, who have a very realistic way to look at things. And Mercury is going to be people who are very intellectual, communicative, witty, who are quick thinkers, like Virgo or Gemini people. So that's the first thing. But also the ascendant itself, people putting planets on your ascendant in the same sign of your ascendant, especially in conjunction to your ascendant, but it can also be just in your first house in the same sign. You're going to really relate to these people quite strongly. You're going to notice them and they're going to notice you. Any conjunction with personal planets, you're going to notice. So that's the first thing. And I would say that's also a thing that is true whatever system of astrology you're using. The ascendant-descendant axis will always be very prominent in synastry very often, more often than not. It's really something that can tell you basic compatibility. And so also looking at the seventh house, which is the house of partnership and marriage and all sorts of association, really, not just romantic, look at the seventh lord as well. So to give you my first example, Aries rising, Libra descendant, Libra seventh house, look at Venus. Where is Venus placed? How is Venus aspected? This is going to tell you more about your partner, the kind of partner you might actually end up with. Second thing is look at personal planets and angles in your chart being strongly aspected. So that's a very important thing. If you don't have any aspect with someone between your personal planets, so the personal planets are Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus and Mars, and the angles, ascendant, descendant, ICMC, you don't have these aspected strongly by someone else, then it's unlikely that you're going to even relate to that person or really feel a connection. You know what I mean? Like, you really need these connections to feel like you understand the person. So it can be especially connections to your moon Venus conjunction. It can be a trine, it can be opposition as well, but you do need these harmonious aspects, right? And especially I think you do need conjunction. I think without a conjunction, a strong conjunction, it's actually quite rare to see people really having that strong of a connection. It can be easy with the trines, but especially with the conjunction, at least one. It can just be one, like it can be Sun Moon, which is already huge, but it can also be Venus Mars, or it can even be Venus Moon, or the moon conjunct somebody's ascendant. Venus conjunct the ascendant is really cool as well, or even Mercury conjunct the moon. It brings usually a strong friendship. These will really create that strong connection, that recognition, and especially to the angles as well. The aspect to the angles are really strong as well. So next thing, moon compatibility. So this is a big one. I'm sure you've heard about it. The moon is probably the most important planet. I don't want to say it's the most important, because I think the angles and, the angles are very important too, but the moon really is what nourishes you, okay? So if your moon is not well aspected by the other person, let's say the other person's planets are all making oppositions or square to your moon, right? Like, these red lines when you look at the the astrology, your birth chart online, it kind of means that the moon is attacked permanently by other people's planets, okay? And actually, you could say that about any aspect to any personal planet, or any planet really, in synastry, in chart comparison. If you receive only harsh aspects from someone else, then the planet is attacked, and aspects in synastry are really important because they are like permanent transits. So when you have, like, I don't know, like Saturn in your seventh house, or Saturn conjunct your moon, in a transit, Saturn is actually transiting your moon, you feel it, right? So imagine when you're with someone, they have their planet conjunct your planet, or in aspect to your planet. If the aspect is harsh, it's like permanently like that, more or less. It doesn't mean that you don't need some harsh aspects, some challenging aspects. Usually there are going to be some challenges as well, because, well, we like to grow in our relationships, but in general you're going to have at least some harmony in the chart. But especially when it comes to the moon, how your moon is aspected by the other person's planets is really important, because the moon is kind of like a non-negotiable part of yourself. It's really what you need to feel comfortable. It's what you need to feel safe. So if the moon is harshly aspected, or even if the moons are not compatible, this is going to be really difficult, because the moon is kind of like what you need to be nourished, like I said. And so if you receive bad aspect from the other person's planets to your moon, or if the moons are incompatible, yes, maybe the other person is going to nourish you in their own way, but it's incompatible. So it's kind of like being nourished with poisoned food or poisoned water. It's not the right kind for you, or it's something you're allergic to, or something like that. This is a strong analogy, but it's really to give you the clear image of what it's like. It's very difficult, and the moon, you can't really modify it. I think that with the sun, or with Mars, or even with Venus, somehow we can, especially with Venus actually, we can adjust to the other person. We can make an effort, a conscious effort, to do things differently. But with the moon, you're really going to feel really bad if your moon is not nourished. You're not going to feel good in that relationship. So however, if the moon is really well aspected, you're going to feel very good, very comfortable. You're going to be able to be yourself. And I think that's one of the most important things in relationship, right? Being yourself, and feeling understood by the other person as well, feeling safe. So also another thing about the moon especially, but actually any planets, is mirror aspects. So one thing that you will find in compatibility, even if you don't have necessarily the exact compatible sign, let's say one has the moon in Capricorn and the other has a moon in Aquarius, but let's say the one with the moon in Capricorn has it conjunct to Uranus, right? Already we have an understanding here. It's not ideal because the moon are not classically compatible, but they're okay. And also between these two particular signs, to give you this example, we have the Saturn rulership. Saturn rules Capricorn, and also it's the classic ruler of Aquarius. So this kind of works out. But it would be nice if the rest of the synastry would be also quite harmonious. But you will see mirror aspects to the moon, especially. That's something that I've noticed. Like you have moon conjunct to Neptune, you're going to be with a Pisces moon, or moon conjunct to Mars, you're going to be with an Aries moon. You know what I mean? But it can also be aspects to Venus especially as well, because Venus is the love planet, right? So aspects to Venus, if your Venus is aspecting Jupiter, it's likely that your partner may have, either Venus in Sagittarius or actually also an aspect to Jupiter. I actually see a lot of the time the mirror aspect, like someone having the same aspect as you. It doesn't mean they have Venus in the same sign or even in the same element as you, but they have that aspect too. So that brings me to the next point, which is look at Venus and Mars, but especially Venus and the aspects to it. So I do think that in a birth chart, Venus really is the main romantic planet, the main planet of attraction, whatever the gender. So you may have heard that, Venus is what in a man's chart, or in a heterosexual man's chart, is going to show what he likes about a woman, and in a woman's chart is going to show how she attracts her man, and Mars, on the other hand, is going to show the ideal man for a woman, and in a man, it's going to be how he chases what he wants. And honestly, I kind of disagree with that. I find it very old school. It's not like it's without any basis, because it does have a basis, because Venus is definitely the feminine planet and Mars is the masculine planet for sure, but this really depends on the person, and I find it very limiting, honestly, and especially because it's without even considering like the LGBTQ point of view, which is clearly not really considered in that way. It's very old school, it's very traditional, but even without looking at that, just for like even hetero couples, I find it super limiting and untrue, honestly, because these planets are personal planets, so they do act, they have an impact in our life. Venus in a man is going to show also his style, how he likes to dress. He's going to show what he likes to do, even his hobbies, his taste in music, in movies, all of these things, in his taste in art. It's not just about like the type of women that he likes. It's also about things that are very much about himself, and same for a woman. But for a woman, Mars also is going to show how she, for both genders, but I'm saying for a woman because, it goes against this idea that women project their Mars onto their men, like straight women. Is going to show how a woman is going to do things a lot of the time, how she's going to pursue certain things. And even back in the days when things were very traditional, women still worked. Women were working in the fields a lot of the time. So you bet that they were using their Mars, because Mars is also your physical energy. It's a very primal planet that's very physical. So anyway, what I'm saying is that primarily Venus really is about relationships and love. This is really going to tell you what attracts you in a person, and especially the aspects to Venus. If you have very strong aspects to Venus, it's going to show you your experiences in love. So if you have, for example, let's say you have Venus in aspect to Pluto, well, you're going to experience very intense relationships, definitely with a strong sexual pull. Venus, Pluto, you're guaranteed to have these very transformational relationships with that aspect. So Venus really is the primary planet of love, while Mars in itself, I don't think shows that, because Mars can show the sex drive for sure, but it needs to be in aspect to somebody's feminine planet, in my opinion. So like if Mars is conjunct Venus, or even in any aspects to Venus, there can be a sexual interest in Synastry. If Mars is conjunct the moon, there can also be a very strong sexual interest. Mars conjunct the ascendant as well. But in general, Mars itself is more a planet that shows what you can be annoyed by. So it's not really a planet of romance in itself. I wouldn't say so. So the other things that I want to talk about, and that is kind of a given as well, is elemental balance. So you want to have compatible elements in general. If you are fire and air works well together. Earth and water work well together as well. But if you have only fire, you're fire dominant, and you want to be with someone who has moon in water, Venus in earth, it's unlikely that you're going to even be that person's type, or that you're even going to fulfill that person's need, and vice versa. If you are someone who's very earthy or have only water placement, you're unlikely to fit the needs of someone who is mostly air dominant, like moon in air, Venus in fire sign, like that's unlikely. Now, a lot of people, obviously, they have both. They might have Moon in an earth sign, but Venus in a fire sign. So that also means that they're going to be with someone who is going to reflect these, this balance as well, someone who's going to have a bit of both. But yes, this is really basic compatibility. The elemental balance is very important in my opinion, and it's really a quick, easy way to check if you might get along with someone, especially on the long term, and the sun, obviously, I don't talk about the sun much here because I think that the sun is not the most important planet to having compatibility. It's still important, it's a personal planet, but I would say moon and angles and even Venus somehow are more important or more descriptive of your romantic life. I think that if you have sun square sun in synastry, it's okay. You have other good compatibility, it's not a big deal at all, in my opinion. It just means that you're going to have very different, very different jobs, or that you're very different people externally. But in general, you like the same things, you relate similarly if you have similar Venus or good Venus aspects, and you're going to feel safe with one another and very comfortable, and the daily life is going to be easy if you have compatible moons, right? And one last thing I want to talk about is completion patterns. So this is a bit more advanced, but let's say if one only has hard aspect to a natal planet in the natal chart, let's say in the natal chart your Venus is only making a square to Saturn and that's it. Your Venus on its own, in your own chart is it's not very well supported, you know what I mean? So you yourself, you will struggle with your Venus. But let's say someone makes a trine to your Venus. Let's say your Venus is in Gemini and someone has a planet in Libra, like the Sun or Jupiter or the Moon, and it's making a trine to that Venus. Through the synastry, your Venus is going to be supported now. It's going to be to feel more positive. It's going to feel less crushed by that Saturn aspect that you have in your natal chart. Okay, so I think that this is a really good way to also look at compatibility. Look at the planets that only receives challenging aspects in your natal chart, and look at especially the trine signs, I think, because if it's in a conjunction to your planet, then it's going to also be on that difficult aspect. Like let's say, like to give you the example of that Venus in Gemini square Saturn, someone has, like, let's say their moon in Gemini conjunct your Venus, then their moon is going to square your Saturn as well, so that's not ideal. But let's say that Venus receives a trine, let's say someone has their moon in Libra, and that, it aspects your Venus in Gemini, and that person's planet in Libra doesn't receive any harsh aspects from your birth chart, then this is very good. You're going to feel really supported. So all that to say that if someone brings a soothing aspects to your planets, their presence will be highly appreciated in your life. On the other hand, if they make hard aspects to your planet that is already unsupported in your natal chart, it's going to be very challenging, and it's going to feel like you're constantly attacked by someone else, So another thing about completion patterns is if someone closes a pattern in your chart. So this is a bit more advanced, but let's say in your natal chart you have a trine between Sun in Taurus, Moon in Virgo. Okay, so you have a trine between two earth signs, right? An easy aspect. Then let's say you meet someone who has their Moon, Sun, Venus, whatever, in Capricorn, but a personal planet in Capricorn. All three earth signs will be represented in the synastry. So it's going to create what we call a grand trine. It's going to, like, if you look at the synastry, the shape of it, the wheel is going to make a grand triangle, a triangle. So the pattern is closed, So this is very powerful in synastry, and you can have other patterns, different patterns. They're not just the grand trine. The grand trine, I would say, is the easiest to understand, and it's also a very good planetary aspect to have in synastry, but it's really going to reinforce the relationship. You're going to feel more whole when you're with someone who completes your pattern. It's going to feel like, oh, that's what I was missing, and you're going to really be able to do a lot together. Another thing is the conjunction with the nodes. So the north node, south node, you will see conjunction to the nodes a lot of the time in relationship. It's rare not to have conjunction to the nodes. Usually it's conjunct to the angles, But I've seen it conjunct personal planets or even Saturn, and the nodes, they are like the points, the karmic points in the chart, so they really point to what we are meant to do or where we come from. The South node is like where we come from. It's kind of like this past life point, and the North node is what you're meant to learn in this life, what you're meant to accomplish in this life. So if someone has a personal planet conjunct to your South node, it's going to feel like this person. It's going to feel familiar, and especially if it's a very easygoing planet like Venus or the Moon, is going to feel very comforting and easy. Now, the thing with the South node as well is that usually it's an energy for us that is a little stagnant. It's something we already know well. It's something that we have mastered in this life. We understand it really well. So it kind of keeps us in our comfort zone, which can be very comfortable, obviously, but it's not going to make you grow. However, if someone has conjunction to your North node, it's going to amplify that energy, first of all, because the North node amplifies things. And it's really going to make you feel like, oh, this person shows me the way forward. Like there's something about this person really kind of helping you being more than what you're supposed to be. Now, I don't believe that the nodes themselves are enough to qualify as a strong bond, because first of all, they remain in the same sign for a very long time. So this, I do think that it's not like the personal planet that changes very quickly, or the angles. So it's less personal. It doesn't necessarily guarantee long-term relationships. So don't look just at the nodes. But I just find it very common in long-term relationships to have these conjunctions to the nodes, and especially like nodes conjunct the angles. I've seen that a lot. Saturn contacts, these are also quite important, I would say, especially easy contacts. Conjunctions to Saturn are very strong, they are, but Saturn always brings a bit of heaviness, honestly, and it will make things very real, and it will make things stick, right? So yeah, Saturn contacting your personal planets, your angles, can be very important as well. So finally, another thing that I want to talk about is the composite chart. So the composite chart is the chart that looks at the midpoints between the planets of the two partners and create one single chart that kind of embodies the relationship itself. So even though you may have very good synastry, you need to look at the composite chart to kind of see how it's going to go long term, and how the relationship is going to work out. And with the composite chart, honestly, I have rarely seen any long-term relationship that is healthy that doesn't have a pretty good composite chart. In general, when people have difficult composite chart, it rarely works out, or the relationship is somehow toxic. So again, composite chart, it's easy to look at it. You just look at if the planets are well aspected, if they don't receive too many, if they're only like difficult squares or opposition, it's going to be a difficult relationship. But if there are trines, if you have planets conjunct the angles, this is going to be not only a relationship that can last, that is strong, but also a significant relationship. So that's all I wanted to talk about, pretty much. I'm going to make another video for the Vedic methods, because I do think that these are very good as well, very accurate. And I will see you next time in another video. Bye.